Ahmed Aziz's Epic Year, chapters 7 through 9. If you are ever forced to move to Minnesota, July is the time to do it. Mom and Sarah suctioned the clear plastic birdhouse they brought to the glass patio door, and soon we had birds and then squirrels, followed by rabbits looking for anything the others left behind. It felt strange watching the birds so close, intrusive. But they didn't seem to mind. Everyone was walking outside on rollerblades, bikes, kayaks, walking their dogs, their babies, or themselves. Their time outside felt hectic, unlike the lazy days in Hawaii. I didn't understand it then, but 7 months later in the dead of winter, it would make sense why everyone was rushing to relax. Dad had his first doctor's appointment. I thought the doctor should have made a bigger deal about it. I mean, I got a bouncy ball for having my braces tightened, and Dad had moved his entire family for these appointments. That deserved a party or a medal or at least a box of chocolate. They gave him 3 small pills a day for the next few months instead. 3 pills that were supposed to try to clear his infection. 3 pills that drained his strength. Somehow, he still had enough energy to play tour guide for the 4 of us, and I was the one yawning. We headed out of Farthing and into the cities every day. We took pictures in the sculpture garden, posing in front of the Spoon and Cherry, rented pedal cars at Minnehaha Park, biked around Lake of the Isles, ate at every food truck we saw, got lost in the skyways, and found the closest halal food market. Mom had only 2 weeks before she started work, and we made the most of it. We lived like tourists because, according to Dad, once we became locals, we'd never see the sights. I had never been a tourist before, and I didn't think I'd ever feel like a local. We had a blast those first weeks. I think it was their way of apologizing for the move. I'm glad we did because right after that, I met Jack. Of all the stories Mom repeated, the one we heard most often was about her grandmother, her Umama, who lived with them in India when Mom was a child. She was 80 years old and spent most of her day sitting comfortably in the front veranda in her special chair with long arms that swung forward to become a leg rest. Every morning before school, she'd braid Mom's hair and tell her the story of how her mother had braided her hair. Umama repeated the story every day using the exact same words, even when she couldn't remember anything else. Whenever we wanted to make sure to remember something, Mama called it a hair braiding moment. That meant she was trying to tuck that memory into the deepest folds of her brain so she'd never forget. The day we stayed inside during a hurricane warning and watched Harry Potter movies together or went for a hike where there was no trail and found rocks someone had used to spell out the word peace. Those were hair braiding moments. I feared meeting Jack would be a hair braiding moment, but not a moment filled with candy and smiley faces that you talk about with friends on long summer days lying on your back looking at clouds. It would be the kind of moment you wish you could delete or at least rewind. And here's the worst part. Not only did Jack go to my school, he also rode my bus. Not only did he ride my bus, but he also lived 2 doors down. That meant potentially I could be around Jack 24/7. Ensnared. I met Jack before school started. We met in my garage where my defenses were down and I wasn't ready. Boxes we hadn't unpacked yet were stacked in the garage after I persuaded Dad not to put them in the basement. I wasn't excited to go down there every time we needed something. He reminded me that in winter it would be a lot more comfortable searching for something in the warmth of the basement instead of the below freezing of the garage. I'd worry about winter when winter came. Dad's general plan was that if, after a year, it was still in the box, we probably didn't need it and it could be thrown out. Once in a while, he'd send me out there to get something for him. He called it search and rescue. As in, could you search and rescue the big pasta pot? Or could you search and rescue the small white trash can? If we needed it, it was rescued. If we didn't, it deserved to be thrown out. I was on my knees digging through a big open cardboard box searching for, in an attempt to rescue, the big green ladle when I heard skateboard wheels on my driveway. It was Jack. Unlike movies I have watched and books I have been forced to read, you can't tell a bully by looking at him. Maybe that's why I hated books. I never learned anything useful from them because Jack looked like a nice guy with his round face, Hair gelled into a wave high enough for a surfer to crouch under, and big blue eyes. He looked like the kind of guy who'd have your back in a fight. I couldn't have been more wrong. "So you're the new kid who's going to be in our school?" Two boys hung back while Jack stood on his skateboard, eating a bag of chips, rocking back and forth, trying to stay in one spot. "Yeah, my name is Ahmed," I replied, and started to get up. He got off his skateboard and walked toward me, standing so close I smelled Doritos and sweat. The other two didn't come closer, but they also didn't walk away. He turned his chip bag upside down, dumping red crumbs all over my almost new white tennis shoes. I didn't move. I barely breathed. It was quiet except for the sound of Jack crumpling the empty bag in his hand, and I watched with my mouth partially open as he threw it at my chest. "Welcome to Minnesota," he said before riding away on his skateboard. Maybe I could have reacted faster if we weren't in my garage, if I wasn't caught off guard. I doubt it, but maybe. And I didn't see him again until the first day of school. Chapter 8. Sarah and I were in different schools for the first time. Along with getting lost in a corn maze and gagging on lutefisk, I added it to my running mental list of things I was being forced to experience. Apparently, it was all going to help build my character. I had never been on a school bus before either. In fact, I had never really had a first day of school before. Not the kind of first day where the new kid walks lost in the halls and someone bigger pushes him so papers go flying everywhere. I had never had that kind of a first day. I'll admit, I was nervous. I was so restless all night that when Mom came to say good night or good morning, I didn't know if she was there to say good night or good morning. I pulled my favorite shirt over my head, a dark red t-shirt with a silhouette of a surfer on the front and Hank's hamburgers in cursive on the back. The irony of complaining about being associated with surfing and this being my favorite t-shirt was not lost on me. I didn't remember it being so faded or having so many holes in it. I took it off and tried one of the new shirts we had bought for school. I put Hank's hamburgers back on. "Hank, don't fail me now." It didn't feel like my usual first day of school. The air was lighter, less wet. There were only 3 of us at our bus stop. Me, a girl who towered over me with a mess of curly black hair and feet to put Michael Jordan to shame, and of course, Jack. In the past few weeks, I had seen more farmland than I knew existed. In the middle of flat fields, as far as the eye could see, rose tall, cylindrical metal structures, often topped with a triangular cap. Sometimes there'd be 5 or 6 standing next to each other, not touching. Adjacent. Silos, Dad had explained, to store grain. The 3 of us stood at the bus stop like silos, not touching or communicating or revealing the inside of us until Jack broke the silence. "Oh, look at that. The 3 of us together the whole year. Won't that be fun?" Curly Hair plugged her headphones into each ear before turning her back to Jack. That left only me, and fun wasn't the first word to come to mind. After much negotiating, Mom and Dad had agreed to say their goodbyes through the living room window instead of waiting with me at the bus stop. The blinds pulled right and then left as they fought to get the best view. The movement caught Jack's eye, and he turned as Mom waved, camera in hand. "Parents," I mumbled, embarrassed. I waited for Jack to get on the bus first, eager to put distance between us. I wasn't expecting him to be a front seat sort of guy, and was lost in that thought when he stuck his foot in the aisle, launching me forward, my face hitting ground. I caught the scream before it escaped my mouth, my teeth clenched to hold it in. I turned around, but he was looking out the window. I touched my cheek where it throbbed. My fingers were wet from tears, not blood. I don't know what was worse. It wasn't the fall, it wasn't the pain, it was everything. I wanted to turn and yell at him, let out a few obscenities, tell him to leave me alone. But opening my mouth would release the rest of my tears. The last thing I needed on my first day was to let Jack see me cry. With that non-response, on the very first day of school, I silently gave Jack permission to torment me. "Keep it moving," the bus driver yelled. There's no way he could know my Cheerios were about to make a second appearance, and no one seemed to notice I was sweating a little too much for a slightly cool September morning. I found a seat and put my backpack next to me, the universal sign for don't sit here. At the next stop, Jack's friends got on. I watched them, pretending not to watch them. Jack moved to the last row with them, kicking another boy out of the spot they decided would be theirs. Hey, Ahmed, it was Jack. He was sitting 2 rows behind me. I didn't respond because I didn't know how to respond. Hey, Ahmed, he said louder. When I was younger, I tried to teach people the soft H in Ahmed. Teachers, friends, the dentist, the general public, like you're exhaling or sighing, I told them. But they always sounded like Darth Vader breathing into his mask, and I gave up. I wasn't about to correct Jack either. Hey, Ahmed. I hated my name. No time for a shower? Man, I can smell you all the way back here. And he broke into a cackle. Maniacal. Why couldn't I come up with something to say? Something witty, quick, and funny. Something. Anything. It's hard to ignore someone when they're yelling inches from your ear, but that was my plan. Not a brilliant plan, I'll admit, but it was the only one I had. We made it to school. I was barely intact, and the school day hadn't technically started. I remembered this scene in Holes when Stanley was sentenced to dig a 5-foot hole every day, each day nothing but heat, thirst, and exhaustion. He stood in the scorching heat staring at his first finished hole. One of the boys comforted him by telling him the first hole was the hardest. I understood what he meant. The first hole is the hardest. Chapter 9. After that bus ride, the morning was a breeze. The 6th grade classrooms were grouped together, giving me enough time to find my way between bells. There were so many first day rules and expectation lectures, no one had time to notice me. Wasted worrying didn't stop me from future worrying. Lunch was next. On the first day of school every year, Mom packed us lunch, declaring a year of healthier eating. I saw her roll chapatis in the corner of my lunchbox, leaving enough space for fish curry. She couldn't have chosen foods more likely to alienate me at the lunch table if she tried. If you care what you eat, Ahmed, pack it yourself, Mom would have said if I'd asked for something tame, a turkey sandwich with cheese. I don't even need mayo. Dad would have given me a non-smelly, boring, plain old sandwich. He grew up here. He got it. On the second day of school every year, Mom forgot all about it. It was tradition. On the first day of school every year, I dumped my home lunch and got in line at the cafeteria. That was tradition, too. I picked up my tray. So far, so good. Turkey or meatloaf? Meatloaf, I replied. I pushed the tray along and picked up a few things without looking up. It could have been liver and broccoli, and I wouldn't have realized. Tray in hand, I looked around the cafeteria. If every teen movie was to be believed, I was not ready to face the next half hour. Prickles of sweat dotted the back of my neck. The room was noisy and chaotic. Dinner rolls were tossed, music blared, kids danced. Seriously. There was even a stage at the front of the room. Cacophony. I don't remember lunch being like this at my school, but things were louder from the outside than the inside. A spot opened at the end of a table. From the age of 5, whenever I was nervous or anxious, Dad's advice was always fake it till you make it. They can't tell what you're feeling unless you show them, he'd say. Usually I answered with an eye roll, but not today. Today I faked it. I sat down like I wasn't nervous at all, like I belonged. I looked over what I had collected. Meatloaf, a fruit bowl, green beans, and a roll. Not bad for blind picks. I teetered on the edge of the bench, trying not to fall, but leaving space between me and the others. My goal was to get through lunch and get to class. In class, there would be a spot for me, and I wouldn't have to carve out my own space. You must be the new kid. The voice was rough and gravelly, the voice of someone about to stuff a kid's head in the toilet. My plan, being the new kid, was to blend in, not to get noticed. Stepping off the bus, I knew my plan would never work. It's hard to camouflage with white. Yep, you guessed it. I looked up and was surprised to see the face that belonged to the voice. He had arms like twigs, fuzzy blonde hair, maybe the thickest glasses I'd ever seen, and a face like a 6-year-old's. I'm Carl. I heard there was a kid moving here from Hawaii, but I thought you'd be more surfer dude, less math geek, he said. I've never surfed in my life, and actually, I'm not that great at math either. I slid over enough to prevent an embarrassing fall. I get it. I've never been on ice skates and never watched a hockey game. That's the Minnesota equivalent. I pushed my meatloaf around before forcing a bite. The back of my neck cooled where the sweat dried. How do I find Mrs. Garter's room? I asked. It's not with the other classrooms. A smile spread across Carl's face, lifting his glasses to his eyebrows. He pushed his glasses back down. You're in accelerated language arts? Hey, me too. I'll take you there. A piece of green bean sprayed out of his mouth and landed near my hand. He took a second to swallow. Did you read all the books? It was weird how they were so different when I read them in elementary school. I'm kind of excited about this class. Mrs. Garter is a legend around here. I've been hearing about that trophy for years. This year, we're going to take her down. A loud crash at the front made me look up. The dancers on stage lay in a pile on the floor until the girl on top stood up, freeing the others. They laughed. Well, I started Holes, but I haven't been able to find the book since I got off the plane. I haven't finished it, I replied. His eyes widened. Really? You know, if we left right now, we could make it to the library, get you a new copy, and still make it to class. I had no intention of finishing the book, but I wasn't going to admit that to the only person willing to talk to me. We emptied our trays, food uneaten, and left for the library. I had now been to the library more times in 6th grade than the entire 5th grade year. Both of us crouched at the bottom shelf. Just once, I'd love to find a book at eye level. He shuffled forward on his knees, finger tapping each author on our way to the right one, and I followed behind, a faithful puppy waiting for his master to find him a treat. Only this treat was like a shot at the vet. RWRYSASB. Carl knew his way around the library, but luckily for me, there were no copies of Holes available. Oh man, Carl said. What are we going to do? He seemed to be mixing me up with someone who cared. I hadn't gotten very far into the book anyway. There may be a copy of Bridge to Terabithia here, or the other book, I can't remember its name. Why don't we get one of those? My feigned interest in getting the work done seemed to make Carl feel better. There was one copy of Terabithia left. The front page was hanging on by a thread, literally. When I tried to flip through it, a few pages fell to the floor. I picked them up and shuffled them together. The title page had a faded blue stamp on it. This book was donated to the Cedar Valley Middle School by Ahmed Aziz. Every hair on my body stood on end. The librarian took the book, holding it by its corner. You know, we'll have more copies in a couple of days when we're done unpacking things. No, I replied, I'll take this one.